I now have the pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Kelly Evans. For many of you, there's no introduction needed. You already know Kelly from her hit podcast, Mama Mystery, a true crime podcast. Kelly is a mother of 3 with a 4th coming in just weeks. Kelly's a champion for the truth and justice and devoted storyteller. Her own battles in life have given her a voice to empower others to find resilience and seek truth. Kelly uses her message to help others use their adversity to make life better, not bitter. Please welcome Kelly Evans.
Hello. You know, I have to confess, when I agreed to give this speech, I didn't fully appreciate what it would be like to be 9 months pregnant and standing here on an 85-degree day in June. So, you know, people always talk about that pregnancy glow, but I'm just going to be real with you. This is sweat. So I want to thank you so much for having me here today. It truly is an honor to be speaking at this incredible event, surrounded by such incredible, inspiring women. This room is filled with women who have faced their own battles, who have their own stories of struggle and triumph. And today we come together not just to celebrate our successes, but to acknowledge the challenges that we have overcome to get here. The importance of strong, empowering women cannot be overstated. We are the backbone of our communities, the nurturers of our families, and the leaders of our future. Strong women inspire others to find their strength. They lead by example, showing that it is possible to rise above adversity and to turn pain into power. Each of us has the potential to be a beacon of hope and a source of encouragement for those around us. I firmly believe that being vulnerable and sharing our stories, by doing that, we not only heal ourselves, but also pave the way for others to follow. Empowerment comes from within, but it is also cultivated through the support and inspiration that we give and receive from one another. So today, I want to share a little bit of my story with you. I was born and raised in Johnson County, Kansas, and if you're not familiar with the area, it is often recognized as one of the most wealthy and affluent areas in the state. Imagine neighborhoods with sprawling, beautiful homes and lawns, each set behind manicured lawns and gated communities. And in Johnson County, luxury is not just an exception, but it's a norm. Yet behind these well-kept facades, my life growing up faced its fair share of turmoil. The contrast between the outward appearance of my family and where I grew up and my personal struggles is a reminder that challenges can exist anywhere, regardless of the surroundings. To outsiders, my life may have seemed perfect. Mom and dad are still married, we drive nice cars, we're smiling in all of our pictures. But what they didn't see were the things that my family tirelessly tried to conceal, which was that my mom was an abusive and violent alcoholic, and her addiction was spiraling out of control and creating absolute chaos within our home. It started early, possibly before I was even born, but when my siblings and I were just kids, one of my first traumatic memories was when she, in a drunken rage, took a sword to our family Christmas tree, destroying all the ornaments that we had made as children, fragments of handcrafted ornaments and pine needles littered our living room floor, and nobody could understand why. It wasn't unusual for her to disappear on benders for days at a time, and during one of those events, we found her only after she had totaled her mint condition 73 Mercedes around a light pole in the middle of the night. I distinctly remember the anguish on my dad's face when she wouldn't come home for nights at a time and he was left to take care of the house and the kids on his own while maintaining a job of his own and not knowing where his wife was. When I was in middle school, she picked me up from school one day under the influence, and for reasons I can't remember or explain, she reached back from the front seat, she grabbed a fistful of my hair and pulled it out of my head. When the car came to a stop, I managed to escape, and she drove through multiple lawns in an attempt to hit me with her car. The next day at school, some of my classmates made jokes about it, laughing because they could hear the screaming and thought, wow, your mom is crazy. And I realized in that moment that I wouldn't be able to relate to my peers, and they wouldn't be able to relate to me. It was a very isolating and lonely experience, thinking that my situation was unique, but it also came with a lot of shame and embarrassment. In high school, her addiction continued to worsen, and the days that she'd spend at the local bar started earlier and earlier. The fighting between my parents and us kids grew worse and more violent. I witnessed her dragging my sister by her hair across our house. The screaming matches between her and I became so severe that I often contemplated taking my own life, and just to escape the pain. And when I confided in her about that, she expressed her disgust with that opinion. I gradually lost trust in my ability to have female friendships because I had a deep distrust for women in general, but I also had jealousy towards girls at my school who appeared to have tight bonds with their mothers. I so desperately wanted what they had and wondered why I wasn't good enough to be loved by my own mother. And if you can't be loved by your mother, then who's gonna love you? Ultimately, I tried to fill the void in unhealthy ways. I quickly dove headfirst into a relationship right out of high school that lasted through college. And I eagerly jumped on that assembly line of life where you graduate high school, go to college, get a job, you get engaged, you get married, you have kids, all ideally by 25. I did all the things I thought I was supposed to be doing in a desperate attempt to find normalcy. But what I failed to acknowledge was that the person I chose to marry had his own dependency issues with alcohol. Deep down, I have to ask myself if my conscience was seeking out another alcoholic to fix. If I couldn't fix my mom, maybe I could fix my husband. But let me tell you what I now know, and it's that you cannot fix someone who doesn't believe they need to be fixed, and you will ruin your life trying. My first son was born in the summer of 2013, and unfortunately, the most notable thing I remember about that pregnancy was my mom insisting on hosting a baby shower, only to not show up to the baby shower and leave me to pay for everything that she had planned. She had planned thousands of dollars worth of flowers and food and decorations, only to ghost everybody on the day of the shower. And she was later found that day passed out in a kiddie pool at the Four Seasons of Lake of the Ozarks. When my son Jack was born, she didn't acknowledge his birth. There was no phone call, no flowers, not even a text. So when I got pregnant with my daughter, she insisted on hosting a baby shower again, but I politely declined for fear of history repeating itself. And she was so outraged by this that she called the police to file false charges on me, claiming that I stole money from her. It doesn't make sense, but it never had to make sense. It was at that point I realized I now have another life I need to worry about, and I need to prioritize that life over anything else, and any distraction from being the best mother I could possibly be had to go. So in May of 2014, I made the decision to completely cut ties with my mom. 2 months later, I received a phone call that changed the trajectory of my life. My dad called, asked if I was sitting down, and with a trembling voice, told me that my mom had died. She died alone on her couch from complications of liver failure due to years of drug and alcohol abuse. My first daughter, Kennedy, was born just a couple weeks later. 2014 was arguably the worst and best year of my life. My mom had died, my dad was gravely ill with a rare blood disease, and I faced the reality that my marriage was a failure. But I had these two beautiful little kids, these lives to live for. And when I looked at them, I saw my brother and I, who were also 12 months apart, and I realized that I had an opportunity to save them from growing up in the same chaos that we went through. I knew in that moment that I had to make a decision, and I had to make it then, because if I didn't make it then, I might never be strong enough. So I filed for divorce at the end of 2014 and moved out with two very small children in tow. And I didn't have a lot of support, but I let my anger and my resentment and my sadness fuel me to make decisions that I knew had to be made, no matter how isolating, no matter how lonely I would be. I would deal with those feelings later, but at the moment, I knew what had to be done. There's a quote by author Mitch Albom that reads, "Love comes when you least expect it. Love comes when you most need it." When I met a guy named Austin Evans in 2015, love was certainly the last thing that I expected. In fact, I promised myself I would never date or marry ever again. I thought I just needed to be alone forever, but I also realized what I most needed and lacked was love. I completely denied Austin at first, and I thought, what in the world was this gorgeous man with success of his own want with a divorced mom of 2 small children? I was very skeptical and guarded and self-deprecating. I was arguably at the lowest point of my life, trying to rebuild from the bottom up, and love was just not on my radar. But as he pursued not only me, but the package that I came with, I knew I could no longer deny it. Austin not only chose to love me, but he chose to love my children. Watching him establish a bond with them completely stole my heart. And once I gave in, I quickly realized that Austin was sent to me, carefully chosen by someone up above who knew exactly what I needed. And for an added bonus, Austin does not drink, like, at all. In 2016, with unwavering support and guidance from my entrepreneur boyfriend, Austin, I opened a little online boutique called Wild Lane, named after the 2 most influential females in my life. Wild, because my mom was certainly that, and Lane, because my daughter's middle name is Lane. I wanted to honor my mom in a way that recognized her chaos, while also acknowledging the impact that it had on my life. Because of the things that I went through, I knew I could handle hard things. I knew I could be independent. I knew I could accomplish things with or without help. And I realized how strong I was to be able to survive despite the lack of support or love from my own mother. I can do hard things. And I especially wanted my daughter to know that she could too. I also committed to the belief that even if my mom couldn't learn from her mistakes in her life, that I could learn from her mistakes after her death. Those mistakes would not be made in vain. I vowed to have that mother-daughter relationship that I always wanted, even if it meant I couldn't be the daughter. I would have it with my own. I vowed to take my health seriously and lead by example for my children, that your body is a gift, and it should be treated with respect, not only by what you choose to consume, but by who you choose to spend it with. Who you surround yourself with matters. After Wild Lane grew to great success, I reached a point in my life where my kids were about to start school, and I knew that I wanted to be present in their activities and their school functions. I wanted to be the mom that I didn't have. I wanted to be the mom at the field trips, every game, every practice, every parent-teacher conference. So I sold Wild Lane, and to this day, I hold a special place in my heart for the lessons that starting a business taught me. Then, just as my kids were starting kindergarten and 1st grade, the pandemic hit. During quarantine, I know we all tried to find ways to keep us occupied. I made the banana bread, just like everyone else. I binged Tiger King multiple times on Netflix. I downloaded TikTok and I attempted sourdough, but quickly realized that's way above my pay grade. But I tried to find ways to combat the boredom. So I had this idea to mesh my love for creativity and writing and my love for true crime documentaries into a project that became a YouTube channel. My original plan was, since I'm stuck at home, I might as well make videos. And then I realized just how hard it was to make YouTube videos and how exhausting it is to do your hair and your makeup for all these videos. So Austin suggested that I do a podcast instead. And I'll be honest, at the time, I didn't even know what a podcast was. Is it something you watch? Is it something you listen to? I didn't know. I didn't get it. So I did some research, and I realized that it was right up my alley. I love writing, I like talking, and I'm obsessed with true crime. And with that, the Mama Mystery Podcast was born. As I stand here today, the Mama Mystery Podcast has been downloaded by millions of people all across the world. We have about 170 episodes. We've been invited multiple times to the biggest true crime convention in the world, which is CrimeCon. And I was recently flown to New York to be a part of a true crime documentary on HBO and ID that airs on June 17th, so mark your calendars. I've gotten to share stories that honor victims while also sharing ways to combat crime and ways to support victims in our communities. But most importantly, among all of my achievements, I got to marry the man of my dreams, Austin Evans, and create the beautiful family that I always desperately wanted. Together we have Jack, Kennedy, little August, and another baby girl on the way in just a few, hopefully short weeks. Throughout the struggles that I faced, I have learned to let my adversities make me better, not bitter. My struggles have given me the confidence to face hard things head on. They have also given me a deep appreciation for things often taken for granted, like the beautiful relationship that I now have with my children or my husband, Austin. By surrounding myself with people who encourage me and lift me up, I feel like I can conquer anything that comes my way. I'm grateful for the ability to extend grace, knowing that what you see on the outside doesn't always reflect what's going on behind closed doors. I now have more grace, not just for myself, but for others, especially grace towards my mother, because I do believe, deep down, that if she could have rewritten her story, she would have written it differently. And I believe that when she crossed that bridge to the other side, and once her conscience was cleared and her demons were released, maybe her attempt to redeem herself as a mother was having a hand in sending me Austin. I want to share with you 3 things to consider. Empowerment is knowing that there is beauty in adversity, and beauty in being vulnerable. By sharing our struggles, we combat false narratives that people who appear to have it all together must not have challenges or must not have less than perfect pasts. I look back and wish that someone would have shared their struggles with me, because maybe then I wouldn't have felt so isolated and alone. So don't be afraid to be authentic. I want you to leave here knowing that you can and should embrace pain and hardships and discomfort, because it is in those uncomfortable spaces that strength, gratitude, and grace are truly born. And third, you are essentially the culmination of the people you most frequently surround yourself with, so choose wisely. And with that, I'm so honored to be surrounded by you all today. So here's to strong women. May we know them, may we be them, and may we raise them. Thank you.